Hello everyone. This is going to be a fun video today. I'm going to be talking about Tiberius Gracchus. Well, fun in the sense if you think bulls running through china shops are fun, then this will be a fun video. And I know I talked about Gracchus in another video comparing Gracchus to Trump, but I have to talk about Gracchus to talk about the fall of the Roman Republic. And I'm going to go into a little bit more depth this time, and I'm going to talk more about how he broke Rome. So, who was Tiberius Gracchus? Well, his mother was the daughter of Scipio Africanus, and if we were in the Lord of the Rings, he would be called the most famous of hobbits. He defeated Hannibal, and the family was one of the leading patrician families in Rome. And his father was one of the wealthiest men in Rome and of the plebeian class. So he was a person of both worlds, although he was definitely an elite, kind of like Trump. Now, Gracchus looked at Rome and he said the problem with Rome is the wealthy have too much and the poor have too little. Sound familiar? And he said, in the past, we had citizen soldiers and they conquered the world, but they didn't get anything out of it. They've lost their farms and they have nothing, and Rome is suffering. We have a manpower shortage. We don't have as many taxes. We have a piece of one of his speeches, and this kind of sums up what he was about. He says, "The wild beasts of Italy have their caves to retire to, but the brave men who spill their blood in our cause have nothing left but air and light. Without houses, without settled habitations, they wander from place to place with their wives and children, and their generals do but mock them, when at the head of their armies they exhort their men to fight for their gods and their hearse. For among such numbers perhaps there is not one Roman who has an altar that has belonged to his ancestor, or a sepulchre in which their ashes rest. The private soldiers fight and die to advance the wealth and luxury of the great, and they are called masters of the world without having a sod to call their own." So what he did in response to this was put forth a land reform law that basically said that the land that Rome conquered would go to old soldiers, would go to the people that conquered it. It sounds reasonable to me, but Rome, the Senate was made up of the wealthy people of Rome, and so they owned most of this land, and they didn't want to give their land up. So most senators were against it. Not all, but most were against it. And more senators would turn against Gracchus because he was basically an ass. He was Trump. Just think of Trump and how his enemies think of him. Same thing. So what he did first to really make the Senate mad was he ignored them. Remember, the Senate did not have power to make bills or to produce bills. They were just to give advice. So what he should have done was gone to the Senate and said, "Look, I want this bill. What do you guys think about it?" And he knew that the Senate was going to not like it. So he said, "Well, I'm going to just go to the assembly." Because that's I can do that as tribune, but that was against tradition. So what the Senate did was they sent their own tribune to block the bill. So he said, "Okay, assembly, vote on this bill," and it was going to get passed because the land bill was very popular with the people. Free land, I would take it. I would be like, "Yeah, go Gracchus." I'd have a Gracchus hat on. Make Rome great again. So, like I said, they bought their own tribune, and he stopped the bill. So what Gracchus did was he said, "Okay, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove you as tribune." Now, this was pretty much illegal, but a tribune shouldn't be able to remove another tribune. So tribune had to, so he tried to get the tribune removed once, but the other guy was a tribune as well. So when the assembly came together and tried to remove him, because they could basically recall him, he said, I forbid it. He said, you can't remove me. I forbid me being removed from office. And that was totally legal. So what Gracchus did was he removed the other tribune from the assembly. And you had to be in the area that you were going to forbid something. So he removed him, and the assembly removed him without him being there. And you can probably tell what the Senate's reaction was. They weren't happy that their man got manhandled, and they called him all sorts of names. They said that he was violating the sanctity of the tribune and this and that, and they said, we're not playing with you anymore. And so Gracchus still wanted to get his bill passed. So what he did was he would stop all commerce coming into the city, into Rome. Remember, the tribunes had power to stop anything, basically. So if Rome wanted to bring grain in, he would say, I forbid it. If they wanted to open up the marketplace, he'd say, I forbid. If they wanted to open up the Senate to speeches, he said, I forbid. He shut down the city, absolutely shut down the city. He was just wandering around saying, I forbid, I forbid, I forbid, I forbid. The only thing he would let happen was debate on his land reform laws. He eventually did get his bill passed through the assembly. His land reform was passed, but I don't know if you can tell, he didn't have very many friends in high places in the Senate. He did have his father. He did have his faction, but outside that, he wasn't the most popular person in the world. The Senate kind of took the position at this time that he's only going to be tribune for a year, and his land reform was passed, but we're not giving any money to him, so it doesn't really matter. He'll be gone in a year. The land reform bill can stay on the books because all the people are going to get really mad at us if we take it off the books. But he'll be gone, and we'll go back to business as usual. Well, two things happened that didn't let that happen. A client of Rome, a very wealthy king, died without heirs, and he gave all of his money to Rome. Now, what usually happened was the Senate took all the money, and they decided what to do with it. They gave it to their friends, they gave it to the state, they built statues, built roads. Whatever they decided is what happened to the money. Well, Gracchus, who wasn't a consul even, he was a tribune, and he decided to take the money himself and basically stick his middle finger up at the Senate again and say, I have my money. Ha 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 ha. I'm going to go do my land reform. Bye. Still, the Senate was still fuming, but the Senate didn't really want to kill him. He was popular. And again, tradition. The straw that broke the camel's back was he decided to run for tribune again. You're only supposed to be tribune once. You could be tribune again, but it was usually a long period of time had to pass before you were tribune. It was unheard of to run for tribune twice in a row. So at this point, any of his friends that he had in the Senate turned against him because they called him king, that he wanted to be king and dictator. And that was kind of like calling someone a Nazi. If you want to be king, it was an extremely horrible thing to want to be or to be called. So things came to blows when he was going to the Senate. Now, his life was in danger, and remember when I said that the plebeians were sworn in to protect their tribunes? Well, he did have plebeians that were camping out at his house, and they would follow him around in the streets to protect him. Well, one day he was going to the Senate, and he was actually warned. He said, the Senate is going to kill you. They're out for blood. I'm not kidding. They've armed their slaves. They've armed gangs. and if you show up in the Senate today, they are going to kill you. And Gracchus kind of ignored him, and he had his own he had his own plebeian army with him, like about 300 people. And so he marched to the Senate, and the Senate just broke out into a mad frenzy. They clubbed him and about 300 of his followers to death. Some of these weapons, they just tore apart benches to club him to death, and they didn't even give Gracchus and his followers proper burial. They threw him into the river, threw him into the Tiber, and then they proceeded to purge any of Gracchus' followers they could. They would capture them and throw them into sacks with vipers, banish them from the city if they were lucky. Some of them escaped. It was a harsh crackdown on Gracchus, and they believed they were saving the Republic. He was a threat to the Republic, and they were killing a dictator and getting rid of that faction. Much like the Democrats, with their second impeachment, are thinking that they're getting rid of a person that wants to be dictator and a threat to the Republic. Same thing here. Now, Gracchus's brother was able to kind of take up the flag, but he was killed in much the same way 10 years later. And the land reform bill stayed on the books, but not much was done with it. So what happened here was, for the first time in the history of the Republic, blood was spilt in the Senate, and it was spilt between political factions. Precedent was broken, and after this point, people did not govern by consensus. They did not try to govern by consensus. They governed by faction. And my faction is good, your faction is bad. I'm going to try to kill your faction if I can. And it doesn't matter if my policies are good or your policies are good. I want to beat you, and I don't care about anything else. That is what Roman politics became a blood sport, and that is where we're heading. It's, if you listen to the rhetoric, the Republicans and Democrats don't talk to each other anymore. And in AOC, when she said Ted Cruz was trying to kill me, I can't work with this guy, he wasn't. He was actually putting a olive branch out. But there's also people on the Republican side that say the same thing about Democrats. This is my team, and whatever you do is wrong. And we don't care about the people. We don't care what you say. And you cannot govern a republic like that. The republic falls. Because if you can't talk to each other, the only other option is force. And by using force, you either have to silence the other person, or you have to use violence. You can silence people without using violence. That's it. There's really no other options. So Gracchus got the ball rolling. He broke the peace of the Republic, but he didn't get anything accomplished. He didn't solve the problem. The problem was still there. After Gracchus was dead, after his brother was dead, after the movement was quashed, the problem is still there. And in further videos, I will describe how that problem came. That problem came to destroy the Republic. Same thing that's going on now. Trump didn't really fix the issues. So his people, his supporters, are still there, and those issues are still there. So Trump is going to be gone, but those issues are going to remain, and they're going to be a threat to our republic. The Capitol raid is a symptom of that. Anyway, I will talk about the dictators in the next video. And I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe and share this video. And never to believe in any propaganda, not even your own. Thanks. Bye-bye.